What's going on, YouTube Metal Complex here, and welcome to episode 5 of my normally Saturday series. I think you guys are watching this on Sunday. The Quest for the Perfect Budget Knife. If you are new to my channel, this is a series where I go over it's actually going to be a 10-part series where I go over each individual aspect of what I think hypothetically would create the perfect budget knife, and not necessarily just perfect for me. Actually, what I'm trying to accomplish here is hypothetically creating from, considering a manufacturing standpoint, of course we have to consider cost in a budget knife, a knife that would serve as many different people for as many different reasons as possible while keeping it within a price range that would be affordable by as many different people as possible. I'll show you the episode list. We've already gone through 1, 2, 3, and 4. We're on ergonomics. Today we'll go down to price. So if you missed episodes 1 through 4, I would suggest you go back to my playlist and watch them so that you can get perspective on how I arrived at some of the points that I'm going to make today. A lot of you might be wondering, how are you defining budget? Because that's different for every single person. You're right. In terms of keeping my options open so that I can make as many different points as possible during this series, I consider anything under $100 budget. And I know that generally gets a lot of people up in arms. So what I want to say to those people is just hang on until the final episode, which is price, which I will cover in detail where I actually think the price should be. But we have to cover everything else first. Also, a bunch of these knives that you're seeing here, not all of them, but a bunch of them were actually lent to me by an amazing channel called Neves Knives. They're awesome. They're a big part of this community, and if you have not checked out their channel, I urge you to. In fact, you can actually leave this video right now, follow the link to their channel in my description, go over there, subscribe, and then come back. I promise I'll still be here. Their content is absolutely worth it. Thank you so much, Neves Knives. I really appreciate it. Also, I do have a Patreon. If you've been enjoying my content and you would like to support me on Patreon, I do generally have goals that end with giveaways that benefit everybody. And I also have exclusive content for my patrons once a week. So if you like this channel and you want to support it, you can follow the link also in my description over to my Patreon. Have a look around, and then you can join any tier. Any tier will grant you access to my once a week Patreon exclusive content. Anyways, we did that in 2 minutes and 30 seconds. So today we're going to be talking about ergonomics, and ergonomics is absolutely important. You guys have heard me talk about ergonomics a lot. In fact, if you've been a part of my channel for a long time, you'll know that the reason that I like, the Man X2, the Shaman, the Spyderco knives, the Hinder XM18, the Para 3, knives like that is because of ergonomics. I'm very particular about ergonomics. I would say that a lot of times will make or break a knife for me, and that generally is the case with a lot of people, right? So I've got a bunch of different ergonomic designs laid out here. So, most of these are budget knives. Some of them aren't, so that I can make a point. I actually like all of these ergonomic designs. They all have a lot of them have different deployment mechanisms. I will remind you, if you're going to make a comment about deployment, that was episode 3. So if you'd like to find out how I got to that conclusion, why I'm saying the things I'm saying, that might help out there a little bit to watch episode 3. But I like all of these ergonomic designs, but I definitely like some more than others. I'll kind of go over one at a time here, each different design. And we're not going to get hung up on each individual model, but rest assured, a lot of these models either already have reviews or are going to be reviewed. So you'll be able to check those out at some point if you want individual reviews. But each one of these knives, if available, will have one of my Amazon affiliate links down in the description. So if you want to purchase it for yourself, it works well. It's very, very simple. What we have here is a simple liner lock design. We have what I always call the primary choil. It's about an 8-inch knife. You've got an area to lock your hand in, keeping your hand, for the most part, from sliding up and down. You're really locking in here. It's got a nice open area that allows you to access that liner lock efficiently, which you guys know who have been watching this series. That would be my locking mechanism of choice. So I like that. It all works well in unison. Now, the problem is that we are limited to this area right here. You can adjust your finger a little bit, but as far as where you actually start cutting, this is the thumb stud deployment, which I've also mentioned I would prefer. But because of its position, it actually, the starting area where you would cut if you're going to cut straight down versus how far away it is from your finger, it's quite a ways. So this is good ergonomically. It's a little bit blocky. There's some nice chamfering there. It feels okay. It's comfortable. I can handle this. I would call these pretty good ergonomics. Don't have an issue with it. Next up, the FH. This is actually the FH12. I keep calling it the FH11, the Gonzo FH12. Again, kind of the same thing here, except we have a flipper in the way. Because there's no thumb stud, I'm a little bit close to that blade, but I'm still kind of dedicated to one spot. There's not a lot of freedom, not a lot of open canvas there. Why? And you guys might be wondering, why is it so important that you get up close to the blade? Well, some cuts, you don't want your finger close to the blade. In fact, some cuts, especially puncture cuts where you want to keep your hands back and away from, whatever it is that you're cutting, this is kind of nice. But a lot of working cuts, where you're cutting into something or sort of slicing into something over and over and over again, the amount of force that you apply to the cut and where that material starts on the blade will determine exactly how fatigued it makes you. If you've cut thick cardboard over and over and over again, I know the shape of the blade and geometry of the blade and blah, 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 to have a huge role in that, and steel type, which again, we're going to talk about in future episodes. But where I can put my hand in relationship to where the cut starts is really important. If I'm going to cut heavy cardboard or rubber for 30 minutes, you bet I'm going to want to get that cut as close to my hand as possible so that pressure that I'm applying to the cut is meaningful. Less energy used. If you're cutting anything for 30 seconds, then it doesn't matter. But on a budget knife, I have to assume that people who are going to spend the money on this knife plan to take it out and really use it. Right? Maybe some people are going to carry it in an office. That's fine. You only spent, a budget amount of money on it. You're going to go out and use it on a construction site. Great. I want it to be capable for that kind of stuff. So that is important. Another great ergonomic design, a little bit more in terms of a palm swell and lines that sort of naturally meet the curvature of your hand. Really, really enjoy this ergonomic design. Everything's nicely rounded off. I'm very, very locked in here. So lock in is great. Again, running into a situation where we've got quite a distance between my finger and the initial point you're going to start cutting. This is still a fantastic cutter. But I'm pretty much dedicated to this one position on the knife. That's the knockout. Next up, the bare knuckle. It's going to be kind of the same thing. Really great lock-in, especially I really like this area here where we're starting to sort of ramp up. This allows you to bear down on the knife, but because it's sort of angled up a little bit, those traction points, that jimping on the back of the blade is really meaningful. So now we're in this is interesting. Now we're in an ergonomic position where, my hands are locked in, kind of dedicated to one place. We're pretty close to the starting point of the blade. There's nothing in the cutting path, and I can, if I need to, in a different type of cut, I can really bear down on this blade. I think that's part of the reason why a lot of people really love the bare knuckle. Not only because it's manual, I appreciate the fact that it's not assisted, but ergonomically and just in terms of a cutting performer, not just with blade shape and blade geometry and steel and all that, but just, how it's set up as a performer, catering to the end user who's really going to be using it over and over again. That's a great example of ergonomics and relationship to the blade. I think the Kershaw Blur is another great example of that. You have a thumb stud that's pretty far back out of the way. If you guys remember, the reason that I chose thumb stud is because it's a setup that doesn't have any protrusions, flipper tabs, thumb holes, or anything that make the overall profile wider. But if you kick that thumb stud back far enough, what you end up with is, let me get the hinder out again, just to remind everybody of why I chose thumb stud. You get the thumb stud in the right place, it acts as an external stop pin. So you get that added stability, that added mitigation of pressure away from the pivot when you're doing some things with your folding knife that you probably shouldn't be doing. And at the same time, it keeps, with the thumb studs being positioned that far back, it keeps it out of the cutting path. The Kershaw Blur doesn't quite have that stud position, but it does have its studs placed in a position that's far enough back that's out of the way of the cutting path. Now, this particular Kershaw Blur does have serrations here, but if you could imagine with me that this was a plain edge, we would have a situation where, because there's no flipper tab, I can really get up close behind that edge, really make those cuts. That's why the Kershaw Blur is generally my number one choice or my number one recommendation for people looking for, if they really want an assisted knife, but they just want a good performer. Kershaw Abler's got a lot of great qualities that I talk about, and this was the knife that kind of broke me into the whole knife hobby however many years ago. Love that. Now the problem with all of those is, besides maybe a little bit with the bare knuckle here, is that we've got ergonomic lines that are pretty darn good, but they're all missing something that I always talk about that I love, that just really makes you feel like, yeah, that's an extension of my hand, and that's contouring. The Spyderco Shaman, which is not actually out here, I'm going to get it out here, was the first knife that had contouring and ergonomic lines that really, really spoke to me. The contouring allows, I mean, our hands are made of flesh, right? Some of our hands are harder or softer, but our skin molds around whatever it is that we're holding. So sharp corners and blockiness are felt, exponentially more than a knife that has extreme contouring like this CRKT Razzle. Love the contouring in this guy, absolutely. Fantastic ergonomic lines that lock you in. Not quite a forward choil up here, but certainly a setup that allows you to get right behind the blade. Thumb stud is for the most part out of the cutting path. I mean, this is an awesome work knife. Geometry might not be something that this knife, blade geometry might not exist as good in this knife as in some other knives in terms of, what type of proficient cutting test you're going to be able to do with this guy, but there's no doubt that this is definitely a utilitarian design that accentuates your hand position. I mean, it's just good. This feels good. I really like this. I wish that, by the way, this is one of those knives where if you see it down in the description, it's not actually going to be this version. It's going to be the mini Razzle. I wish that this version exactly was still available, because I'd probably pick it up. The mini Razzle does look good. I just don't think it has the same contouring as this knife. Really, really great. Now, here's a knife that has, the next one up is actually the CRKT Terrestrial. We're going to put the Shaman down here so I can make a point with it later. The CRKT Terrestrial might not have contouring, but it certainly has ergonomic lines that I really like. And that's the combination of a forward choil and an area to rest your thumb. I think this can work just fine. I also like a thumb ramp. What I want is an area where if I need to rest my thumb, use the bare knuckle as an example, it's rested, but it's also got enough traction to keep it in place. This little slot here, while it might do a little better with some jimping, certainly does well for a place to keep my thumb locked in. So does the thumb ramp on the back of the bare knuckle. I like both of these. I really like that forward choil. Wish it didn't have a flipper tab, because you wouldn't be so condensed in this small space right here, but I definitely can get up behind the blade and make those power cuts, as I call them. The handle is also fairly ergonomic in terms of being able to get my whole hand around it. That's a big deal to me. I don't care if it's a big knife or a small knife. I want to be able to get my hand all the way around it. I know a lot of people make arguments. I've got knives that, I can only get 2 fingers around and they're just fine. The knife that I'm trying to hypothetically create, you guys remember back from episode 1, it's actually 2 different sized knives. If I were going to manufacture this model, it would come in 2 different sizes. A size somewhere between 6.75 and 7.25 inches overall, think roughly para 3 on the high end, and 8 to 8.25 inches on the large size. Think more Ritter Hogue or Spyderco PM2. I want to be able to get my hand all the way around it. If I'm thinking about people using these knives out on construction sites or in the jungle, getting your hand all the way around the knife, being able to have that control, have that security, right, that lock-in, 100%, no questions asked. I want my hand all the way around that knife. I don't care what size it is. That's of utmost importance to me. Let's take a look at another great ergonomic design, one that has great handle shape and is achieving what we talked about in the episode about materials, how I would like to have a liner lock but have an overlay or a scale on top of that, if possible with contouring. And taking a look at this amazing, I'll show you the model number on this. The 1086 is the Chinese Kershaw design. Just awesome. That's so cool how they did that. This little contoured overlay, and it feels so good. I mean, you're a little bit sort of, trapped in there. By the way, it's also manual and running on washers. This is a great little budget knife. You're a little trapped on the handle shape there because of the flipper tab, but man, talk about, simple handle design, nice beefy steel liner lock, and some contoured overlays. Not quite the material I'd want, but boy, close. Let's take a look at a real winner. It's a knife that we talked about here last week. This is the Steel Wheel Shaola. This has contour. It's not true contouring, but it's very shallow chamfering that's very similar to how they did the sham. And if you look straight down these knives, you can see the tops of them are actually flat, but because of this chamfering, you get the illusion of true contouring. It's still, I mean, a lot of people would still call that contouring, but you don't get the excess width that comes along with contouring that has like this really high peak. You can see how thick this knife gets compared to this just heavy chamfering like this. Is you get this nice rounded feel. You know, that combined with a natural handle shape, a nice palm swell back here, nice lock-in position. The Shaola is a very, very comfortable knife that has an awesome carry profile, nice lightweight profile, has the liners that come out to the lips. You guys know, if you watch the review, I sang this knife's praises. This is why. This setup is perfect. We have liners that come out to the lips, so we've got the scales on top. They've got this chamfering. They've got some texturing, right? Locked in. Perfect. That's great. Not quite exactly what I'm looking for, because I'm looking for a forward choil. Why? So that on the smaller model, I can get my hands all the way around it. I can get my hands all the way around the Spyderco Para 3. What if this was 6.37 or 6.75 inches overall? Why is that measurement important? Because it leads me to be able to hypothetically create a blade length that is likely under 3 inches, which solves a lot of legality issues in a lot of places. That's part of the reason for the smaller version. Now, in that size of knife, I'm almost undoubtedly going to be in a 3-finger position back here, but with a forward choil setup like they do on the Para 3, nope, that solves the problem. You can get up there. But you sacrifice blade length. I don't care. I would rather be able to lock my hands all the way around it and work with a shorter blade than have a longer blade that I feel, me personally, that I have less control over. The relationship between the Spyderco Para 3 and the PM2, these are the two sizes I'm looking at, and they serve as great examples of ergonomics. Both of them, you know, I mean, they serve a wide variety of people in terms of overall size and blade length. Both of them, you can easily get your hands all the way around. Both of them have blade designs and deployment setups that keep things out of the cutting path, well, that you can get choked all the way up there. Now, in my ideal design, I wouldn't have the hole, because the hole makes the height and the carry profile a little wider than it would need to be. So you can imagine something like this with a thumb stud that serves as an external stop pin. You've got strength, rigidity, you've got ergonomic lines, you know, assuming the handle's the right shape. And then we add in the contouring of a knife like the Spyderco Shaman or the CRKT Razzle or the, this, you know, probably ideally the Shaola. Imagine with me, combine those features together. Oh, it's starting to take shape. It's starting to take shape. Doesn't that sound good on phosphor bronze washers? Maybe it's got a scale setup, you know, where you've got the liners on the inside, not the cartridge setup. Liners that come out to the lips, so the aftermarket or the company who creates this knife themselves would have, you know, minimal effort going into scales that they could create for you to add your own flair as the customer or the consumer. That's what I'm looking for. I'm looking for contouring or heavy chamfering. I'm looking for a thumb ramp of some sort or a thumb notch to lock in. I want to be able to get my hand all the way around it, the big and the small knife. So if you're, you know, if you live in an area where you can't carry a knife at 3 inches or more, that smaller size is not only going to allow you to legally carry it, but because of that forward choil setup and the contouring and the lines on the handle, you're going to have that comfortable hand position, and you're really going to feel secure even on a smaller knife. That's what I love about the Para 3, and I carry it so much because it's small and it's light, but I don't have to feel like, you know, I got to carry this little tiny knife today, you know, and I'm not completely locked in on the handle because I feel I'm really like sort of smashed in back here, and I kind of feel like maybe I need to let my pinky fall off the back end. No. With the Para 3, I got plenty of handle room. I don't care about losing that 1/4 inch of blade or 3/4 of an inch of blade. I just don't care about it. I think it's a better setup like that. Guys, that's going to be pretty much it for episode 5, Ergonomics. I hope I didn't leave anything out there. I hope I painted a pretty clear picture for everybody. If you enjoyed this video or if you're enjoying this series as a whole, please leave a like. If you'd like to check out my other content, I do, of course, have lots of videos of knives that are either expensive or inexpensive that I don't like, so check those out. If you enjoy all my content, click on this Metal Complex logo right here and subscribe to my channel because there's definitely more coming. Thanks again for watching, everybody, and have a great day.